Today we're talking through 10 players that you need to be stashing on the end of your bench heading into week 3, because if you missed out on Quentin Johnston and or Kayshon Boutte in week 1, we want to make sure that we're beating our league mates to the waiver wire, make sure that we have those high priority stashes on the end of our bench so we don't have to fight the waivers next week. Starting off with player number 1, it is going to be Kyle Malungai for the Chicago Bears. When we're talking about the Chicago Bears offense as a whole, we saw Kyle get 41% of the snap share, up from 13% in week 1, had 7 attempts for 28 yards, 3 targets for 1 reception. Now, there just continues to be this kind of push for Kyle Malungai to be the clear number 2 and to get Kyle Malungai more involved in this overall offense. Now, I'm not saying that DeAndre Swift is absolutely going to die off the cliff and that Kyle Malungai is going to all of a sudden turn into a fantasy football darling, but if we have seen from just these early weeks, there hasn't been a ton of great running backs on the waiver wires because most people have the backup stashed. But Kyle Malungai is currently only rostered in 13% of leagues over on Sleeper. So make sure you go check out some Kyle Malungai. He would be my first stash that I'd be trying to add heading into week 3 fantasy football. Now we're going to just break it down by both running back and wide receiver flex position. So my next running back stash that I would be stashing is going to be Blake Corum for the Rams, 22% rostered over on Sleeper. We saw him with 10.4 fantasy points in week 2, had a 30% snap share, which is crazy because if anyone had been following along, we know that Sean McVay likes to run heavy with a one-back system. We've seen that all the way back to Todd Gurley, seen that with Kyron Williams, and all of a sudden we see Blake Corum out of nowhere get a 30% snap share where he got 5 attempts for 44 yards, 8.8 yards per carry, had that total touchdown. Now, we see in the post-game interview, in this early week interview, Sean McVay ended up saying that, hey, I would like Blake Corum to be getting more involved. I would like Blake Corum to be somewhere around a 30% snap share and Kyron Williams to be around a 60% snap share. And I think if you're looking at this from the perspective of, okay, do I think Blake Corum somebody that I can start right away? No. But we do know that this Rams offense is absolutely cooking with Sean McVay. So if I can go get some Blake Corum, especially if I have Kyron Williams, and even if I need some running back help, like I got a few teams where I went kind of 0 RB and I need to be looking at other options, then 100% definitely be going and checking out some Blake Corum, as I think he's a great RB stash if you need some help at the running back position. My next stash, it is going to be Woody Marks, who made this list last week. And what we saw from Woody Marks is he put up 6.1 fantasy points in full PPR, had a 27% snap share, 3 attempts for 14 yards. But the thing that got it was he had that 1 reception for 37 yards. And Woody Marks continues to elevate, it went from 11% snap share to 27% snap share. Now, Nick Chubb definitely has this backfield on lock, but the part about Woody Marks is he seems to be the most explosive. If you saw that touchdown run with Nick Chubb into the end zone, it looked kind of painful. Kind of looked like me running out there trying to score a touchdown. And listen, I understand Nick Chubb, absolute running back legend, somebody that we need to give our flowers to. He's helped a bunch of people win their fantasy football championships over the years, but he's just getting old and he's definitely injured and those knees are not the same. And so going forward, I definitely want to make sure that I'm stashing Woody Marks, who's 70% rostered over on Sleeper, because I think there is going to be the opportunities. This Houston Texans team, it just does not feel like they have a good ability to block up front. And so I think they're going to have to pass the ball, but they don't really have time to pass the ball deep because that's hurting Nico Collins. So I do think somebody like a Woody Marks could definitely step up in the absence and have some sort of fantasy football value. Now, if I needed a running back, I would definitely lean Blake Corum or Kyle Malungai as my priority stash here. But if those guys are not available, maybe we're playing a little bit deeper league, then Woody Marks would be my third option, as he is only 70% rostered on Sleeper. Now, my fourth must-stash player heading into Week 3 fantasy football, it is going to be Chris Rodriguez for the Commanders. And Ja'Cory Cross-Kamara in this Week 2 game got more opportunity, and especially with Austin Eckler going down, but only had a 22% snap share, put up 1.7 fantasy points. And the kind of big beneficiary of this injury for Austin Eckler was Jeremy McNichols. And Jeremy McNichols, even though he didn't really put up any fantasy football points, it's kind of up in air on, is it going to be JCM? I mean, a lot of people are hoping it's JCM. Maybe some people think it's McNichols. But I kind of tend to believe that there's a chance that Chris Rodriguez could have some sort of value here. I do think Chris Rodriguez, I know he didn't play in the first 2 games. It was a healthy scratch. So maybe this take is terrible. And maybe the true person you need to be stashing is Jeremy McNichols. But I just feel like Chris Rodriguez, we've seen him have some fantasy football value before, in the sense that he's had some decent yards per carry. even last season, like in week 13, he put up 15.4 fantasy points. So I just want to be stashing Chris Rodriguez. Like this is probably for a super, super deep league. If you need running back help, I prefer the 3 guys that I mentioned ahead. But Chris Rodriguez would be my 4th running back stash if I need one. Now, moving on to some wide receiver stashes. We're going to start off with my stash number 1 for wide receiver. It's going to be Elic Ayomanor for the Tennessee Titans. And I need to learn how to say this guy's name. But he's 47% rostered. The threshold's 50% rostered. So maybe not a great stash, but if you're somehow in one out of the 50% of leagues where he's not there, definitely go get him. Had 6 targets for 4 receptions, 56 yards, and a total tutty last week. And Alec just continues to show flashes, continues to show that, hey, if this Tennessee Titans passing attack can get going, he's going to be the clear number 2 next to Calvin Ridley. And if Calvin Ridley is taking the attention of the number 1 cornerback, then I definitely think Alec has a ton of potential to be a great stash candidate. Like I said, I think he would be my priority stash if I needed some wide receiver help. Now, it depends on who's out there on waiver, because some of you guys are playing in 8, 10-man leagues where somehow T. Higgins is out there on waivers. So I am not, of course, putting Elic Ayomanor over T. Higgins. But what I am trying to say that if you're playing in a little bit deeper league, you need some help on the bench, you might want to get a stash in. This guy was definitely someone that was considered on the waiver wire this week. Definitely be adding him if you need some wide receiver help heading into week 3, week 4 fantasy football. My next stash that I'd be stashing in the wide receiver front is going to be Romeo Doubs for the Green Bay Packers. And Mr. Romeo put up 11.8 fantasy points in full PPR, 5 targets, 3 receptions, 1 total touchdown. What do we see? We see Jaden Reed's going to be out. Of course, Christian Watson's out. So really, it's the Romeo Doubs, it's the Matthew Golden, and it's the Downtavion Wicks show. And so I think if he can get more targets, and especially if his snap share is going to go up, I imagine he's been hovering right around that 70%. I imagine he gets up towards that 80% with all the injuries. I think we could be looking at a pretty solid fantasy football wide receiver. Now, I think the floor is decent. I don't love the upside, but hey, when you're getting a guy that's going to be on the end of your bench that you might have to throw in, especially as we kind of start to approach some bye weeks, as we start to see more and more injuries start to happen, cool. 39% roster, definitely want to be stashing some Romeo Doubs if you haven't already. This next wide receiver is actually my favorite stash right now. It is going to be Jalen Coker for the Carolina Panthers. And the Carolina Panthers passing tech has kind of struggled. Their offense has struggled as a whole. But Jalen Coker is currently on IR. So if somehow you have a free IR spot open, like 100% go pick up some Jalen Coker. He was expected to miss somewhere between 4 to 6 games. So he might not be back until week 6. You might still have to wait on him, like kind of the same thing as Rashee Rice. But I'm not saying he's Rashee Rice, but we saw him have some flashes last season where in a game in week 8, he put up 17 fantasy points. He had 21 fantasy points in week 15 versus Dallas last year, 13 fantasy points in week 18. And there's still not like a clear number 2. We literally saw the Carolina Panthers trade away Adam Thielen. And I think the belief was that Jalen Coker was going to be able to kind of take that throne. I just want some Jalen Coker. I think him only being 12% rostered on sleeper leagues tells you all you need to know. I mean, honestly, Romeo Doubs versus Jalen Coker, if I had a spot and I didn't necessarily need Romeo Doubs this week or next week, maybe I lean Jalen Coker, throw him in that IR spot. I definitely love Jalen Coker as a stash. And I'm throwing out one last stash when it comes to the tight end position. It is going to be Isaiah Likely for the Baltimore Ravens. We've seen great things from Zay Flowers. We've seen terrible things from Mark Andrews. Isaiah Likely was ruled out for week 2, recovering from that foot injury. Like I said, he's probably going to miss week 3. I know he's questionable. We'll kind of have to see, but right now he's only 26% rostered. And ladies and gentlemen, he was the waiver wire king of last season. Does anyone remember week 1 versus Kansas City where he put up 26 fantasy points and then he kind of disappeared, but he did put up some decent, solid production. And if you're super desperate at the tight end position, you don't got McBride, you don't have Bowers, you don't have Warren, I would be looking at Isaiah Likely, especially if you're one of the teams that maybe you have the 10th, 11th, 12th best tight end. I want to be going and picking up Isaiah Likely because I do think there is opportunity playing in a really prolific Baltimore Ravens passing attack that could 100% be benefiting a guy like Isaiah Likely coming in and helping your overall tight end spot. Now, this is going to be a new addition to the stash video. Shout out to our editor, John, for saying, hey, maybe throw out some options for some good defenses heading into week 4. Now, I don't love always to have 2 defenses on my team, but if you're in a league where maybe it's a little bit competitive next week on waivers and you got a free spot, cool. Number 1 that I would be trying to add heading into week 4 would be adding New England Patriots defense. Now, they're going up against the Carolina Panthers. Right now, overall, the New England Patriots defense is 21% rostered over on Sleeper, but they are like the number 5 defense. So they're going up against Pittsburgh this week. It's not a great matchup, but next week versus Carolina is an absolute great matchup. Now, the week after that, they're playing Buffalo. So New England Patriots, that would be probably like a one-time start drop situation, which I actually think streaming defenses is the best strategy when it comes to defenses as a whole. But New England Patriots would kind of be the number 1 defense that I would be trying to add heading into week 4 fantasy football, so you don't have to compete with people on the waiver wire. And this next defense that I think you should be stashing, and I honestly don't even think they're like a stash because everyone was hyping them up this week. They got a great matchup versus New Orleans, but it's Seattle. They're also going up against the Arizona Cardinals next week. So I do think if you do need maybe like a 2-week sample size, Seattle could 100% be giving that to you with the New Orleans matchup this week, and then, of course, next week going up against Arizona. I don't think it's the worst matchup I've ever seen. It's definitely not the best, but that would definitely be a stash on the defensive side. Now, another defense that you could kind of definitely look into, and they've been absolutely balling out, and I need to double-check where they're at ranking-wise when it comes to overall roster, but it's going to be the Atlanta Falcons. They're 40% rostered on Sleeper. So somehow the Seattle Seahawks defense is like 70% rostered, and Atlanta Falcons are only about 40% rostered. Same thing with Atlanta. They're going up against Carolina this week, so we like that matchup, especially when we saw them get absolutely go crazy last week versus Minnesota with a ton of sacks, a ton of pressures. But then in week 4, they're going up against Washington, and I understand it's probably like not conducive to say, hey, let's throw Atlanta out there versus Jaden Daniels. But how is Jaden Daniels' knee? Like, that's the real question. If Jaden Daniels is more of a sitting duck back there instead of being kind of the mobile scrambler that we know Jaden Daniels to be, that's kind of my idea when it comes to who we should be targeting when it comes to defense. But if you like these stashes, hit that like and subscribe button as we are on the way to 1,500 subscribers here on the 4for4 Fantasy Football YouTube channel. Appreciate all the support. Wishing you guys luck in week 3. Answering all start state questions down below. So ask us any start state question, and we will get to that, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.